Joyce Foundation. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a 75-year-old Chicago-based philanthropy that invests in public policy and strategies to advance racial equity and economic mobility in the Great Lakes region. That's our mission statement. But one of our core missions is to close the income and race disparities that exist in college and career success. And part of that mission is to ensure equitable access to high-quality education, which is what brings me here this morning, and it's what brings this wonderful crowd here this morning. Now, since 2007, the Joyce Foundation has invested more than $3.5 million in the Latino Policy Forum. Yes, that's. And of course, the forum's mission itself is to provide guidance to policymakers to improve education outcomes for Latino students, to strengthen the pipeline of bilingual teachers in K-12 schools, and to develop and advocate for educator effectiveness. We know, and the data shows, that access to quality post-secondary education is the best way to ensure economic mobility. Yet, as of 2021, less than 26% of Illinois Latinos had either a 2- or 4-year college degree, which is just completely unacceptable and something that needs to be changed as quickly as we possibly can. And of course, that's what this research that we're going to hear about today is going to provide some guidance on. But there's a second reason for 15 years and $3.6 million of support, and that is Sylvia Puente. Sylvia has been the president and CEO of the Latino Policy Forum for 15 years, and I feel personally that the engagement that she and I have had over that period of time and her incredible leadership in building up the amazing team that she has in place today, I'm just so proud and so happy. And it's so important for our city and our state to have your organization functioning at the very peak level that it is now. Sylvia, so she is, one of the most important public policy experts in the country on Latino issues, but most important is her style. She speaks quietly, but she's not afraid to speak truth to power. I was thinking about the idea of, speak softly and carry a big stick. I don't want to suggest that Sylvia's carrying a big stick around, but her power is both in her style, but as well as the substance of what she's bringing to the table. And a lot of the substance is due to the great staff that she has and strong board that she's put together over time. Now I'm going to call her Dr. Puente because I think she just is collecting the honorary doctorates. But recently, Sylvia gave a commencement speech at Governor State, and one of the things that she talked about with students, and I know, by the way, I've done one of those, it's incredibly intimidating and difficult to come up with an original message. But one of the messages that Sylvia was promoting was commit to being a leader. Now, I know, and anyone here who runs an organization knows, that part of being a great leader is hiring great people. But that wasn't the message that Sylvia was promoting at the time. She was saying, go beyond yourself to help someone else. And I think that's a lot about how she leads and why the Latino Policy Center is just so strong. She's received, and also probably why she's received a lot of awards recently. I was really impressed that she received the Oatley Award, which is Mexico's highest recognition of those serving the Mexican community. It's an honor that she shares with some really amazing people like Dolores Huerta, Chuy Garcia, and our own board member, Cecilia Munoz. And that's a really big deal, and I was thrilled to learn about that. She's a shining example of leadership for us all, so please welcome Sylvia to the podium.
Thank you, Ellen. I was just blushing just a little bit there, but really have appreciated your collaboration and partnership. And not only has the Joyce made this tremendous investment in the Latino Policy Forum, they invested us when there was no Latino Policy Forum. And Ellen picked up the phone and called foundation leaders and said, you need to make this happen. So she's been our champion for a very long time. Thank you all. So good morning, buenos dias. Buenos dias. Thank you all for being here, really appreciate you. I really want to thank you also. It was the Joyce Foundation that's been nudging us a little bit over the years to move into the higher education space. And we said, it's capacity, how do we do that and everything else? But we're really happy that with the Joyce's Foundation and the investment of some others that you hear, that we're now able to move and launch into what certainly is a critical issue to pursuing economic prosperity, making sure that more of our students have a college degree. So I'd like to thank many of the people in this room and all of the funders who supported the Illinois Latino College Landscape Study. They include the Crown Family Foundation, the Joyce Foundation, the Vivo Foundation, an anonymous funder, the Staines Foundation, and the Lloyd A. Fry Foundation. Let's give them all a hand for their confidence in us. So I'm deeply grateful to those that provided invaluable advice, guidance, and input on this project over the last 18 months. I really want to acknowledge and thank my co-chairs. We all knew that Juan Salgado was a genius, MacArthur genius. He is the co-chair of this report and the advisory committee that put it together. But I knew he was on the Federal Reserve, but I didn't know that he's actually the deputy chair of the Federal Reserve. So I want to know, Juan, I think we got this place without your connections, but we'll be calling on you in the future. So thank you, Juan, for all of your incredible leadership. And I also want to acknowledge Jesse Reese, we were the triumphant of this, 3 co-chairs of this initiative, and we all know Jesse and his long history in education, and regrettably, he couldn't be here today, but we really want to acknowledge and thank him as well. I also really want to thank the team who make sure that everything is going well today, and I really can't say enough about our education team, led by now Dr. Vice President Rebecca Vonderleck Navarro, all of the AV staff, our interpreter. We have some Spanish language translation going on, and we're really proud and pleased to be able to do that for those that are here. I'd also like to thank the individuals from all the education agencies, the governor's office, the mayor's office, the legislature who are able to join us today. And I don't want to leave out any elected officials or any government officials, so please raise your hand if you're here. Okay, come on, you guys, I'm going to pick on you. So we see a few of you from ISAC, and we see Martin Torres and Patricia Ramos from the governor's office. And point of personal pride and privilege, Martin was the first person I hired at the Latino Policy Forum, and he's now the deputy governor for education for our state. So we have really launched some careers, I think, as well here. So as Ellen said, it's only 26% of Latinos in this state who are adults have an associate's or a bachelor's degree, but it's only 20% of those between 20 and 64. And if we were looking at the whole age span, it would be even less. Only 20% of Latino adults who have earned a bachelor's degree. And as we know, regrettably, the lowest among all racial and ethnic groups. But we have laid a strong foundation to better support Latinos in the P-12 system and higher education. And we've done that with a lot of our help with our partners and certainly with our governor and his staff leadership. But we know that there is still work to be done from early childhood to higher education to bring the dream of college within reach for our community. So to develop what is the beginning of our advocacy agenda in this space, we knew that we needed to have a good understanding of the Latino college landscape. To do this, we partnered with the Illinois Workforce and Education Research Collaborative, which is part of the Discovery Center at the University of Illinois, and you'll be hearing more from them, to perform a literature review and identify the key factors that facilitate Latino college going and completion, as well as to gather the status of Latinos in higher education in the US and Illinois. In addition, Dr. Gudelia López of López Strategic Solutions and Vanessa Peña, a former analyst with the forum, conducted focus groups and mini conversations with more than 47 individual students and parents who generally share their stories and their perspective. We also put together a stellar advisory committee, and those of you that are here, your names have been flashing, but if you would like to raise your hand, we'd like to thank you for your leadership and your contribution for being here and for contributing to this as well. So, point of personal privilege, I have to call out Dr. Carmen Ayala. Not only was she on our advisory committee, and we know our former state superintendent, but she also did that while she was a forum board member for the first couple of years. So today you're going to hear from the researchers. Then we'll have a panel of some people that can bring some of the stories to life. And then we'll be ending with where are we going and how are we thinking about this for our future. So to that end, and to begin that, I would like to call Dr. Meg Bates, who's the director of iWork, and Dr. Mariana Barradon Torres, a research specialist, who are going to walk us through the data and the key factors. As you listen to this presentation, feel free to jot down any questions you have about the presentation or questions. I think there's cards. Are there cards? Steph, there's cards. And where's the QR code? You have the QR code? Is that? Okay, so the QR code, you can see the presentation, you can see the full report, and then obviously you will have it, but the QR code is there so you have it to take it with you. So, Dr. Beg and Dr. Mariana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's been such an honor working with you and Rebecca and Gudelia on this important work. Okay. So it is not moving forward. One second. Building anticipation for the results. Okay, the mouse works. I got the mouse. We'll use the mouse. Okay. Okay, so thank you all for being here today. And we are going to share a quicker overview of the landscape study findings than we have in the past. I know some of you have heard some of these remarks before. Before we jump in, I wanted to acknowledge all of the wonderful colleagues who worked on this with us. So not only did Mariana and I work on this report, but also others from University of Illinois Chicago contributed important critical theory and perspectives on this work, and other team members from iWork, and some of them are here today. So before we launch in on the specific issues of Latino access to and persistence through college, it's really important to understand the context in which we're working in Illinois, which is what's called the demographic cliff that's coming up. And so what you can see in this graph, the top blue line is showing birth rates in Illinois. So on the far left, you see born in 2000, which corresponds to the class of 2018. And on the far right, you see born in 2020, the projected class of 2038. And so what we have here, you can see a pretty steep decline in births in Illinois, and this is all births, not just Latinos. This is the entire state. And then in the black line, you see the senior class enrollment. These are real numbers, so always slightly lower than the birth rate 18 years prior. And in gray, you see the projected enrollment if a linear trend holds for the next few years. So what this is showing here is that we are going to have much smaller high school classes in the next decade or so. And then, of course, that will have a downstream effect on college enrollment. So you can see here, the gray line now is real freshman Illinois public college enrollments. So you can see it's quite a small proportion of that black line, which is ISB's senior class enrollments. And so we can expect that this will result in massive structural changes to our educational institutions in Illinois. And I know that this, in some ways, is alarming, but it also is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to think boldly about how we serve our students now and in the future in our high schools and in our colleges. We are in the room today, I believe, because, as Sylvia mentioned, Latinx education attainment levels do not match those of the overall population. And these people graphs here are for Illinois, but the trends hold nationwide, and Illinois is actually quite similar to the nation in its statistics. So what you can see here is that while Latino students have about the same associate's degree attainment as the overall population, they have much lower attainment of bachelor's degrees and graduate degrees. And the attainment gaps are no accident. They're the result of disparities along the pathway to and through college at every step. And so here I'm going to walk through the pipeline. And these are all Illinois data from the most recent year available. We see that the high school graduation rate, the 4-year graduation rate, Latino students have a lower graduation rate than white students, although a bit higher than Black students. And just so everyone has the same reference point, Latino students will always be in green, white students in orange, and Black students in white in the middle. Then when you look at college enrollment rates, about half of Latino students enroll in college, much lower than the percentage of white students who do, a little bit higher than the percentage of Black students. And interestingly, while you can see that Latino students enroll in 2-year college at about the same rate as white students, they enroll in 4-year college much less, which results for the overall disparity here. Now to look at some indicators of college persistence and success, we see that Latino students are slightly more likely than white students to be in developmental education placement when they enter college. And they have a lower first-year retention rate in Illinois public colleges than white students, although I will note Illinois' first-year retention rate is quite strong nationally. And then looking at completion rates, we see that community college graduation rates are below 40% for all populations, but around a quarter for Latino students. Graduation rates from 4-year colleges are much higher, hovering over 50% for Latino students, but much, much higher for white students. And then when we include for-profit colleges in the picture, we see that Latino students actually have the highest graduation rate from for-profit colleges, but the rate itself is much in line with the community college graduation rate. And so before we move on into the factors that influence these disparities, we just want to say, as a group, that there's nothing inherently better about any education level. And of course, we want to support individual choices and agency. But different education levels do convey different economic and social benefits in our society. And the vast differences in attainment that you see on that trajectory suggests that there are systemic and structural disparities that must be addressed. And so our goal in this forum today is to build a system in which all students have the opportunity to make their individual choice. And I will now turn it over to Dr. Barragan to go through the factors that influence this trajectory.
Thank you. So what we did is, after conducting the lit review, we came up with a series of key issues that we identified from the literature that really can summarize what we identified as areas of opportunity to work on. The first one is academic preparation for college. And here we have a quote of one of the students who participated in Dr. López's focus groups that we feel exemplify how we could summarize the findings. So the quote says, "Once I enrolled in college, I realized that I was ill-equipped to tackle college-level courses. It felt like I was always playing catch-up." So what we see here is that ISB data shows that Hispanic student participation in AP courses has been increasing. So from school year 2016 to school year 2021, it rose from 20% to 26% in AP courses, and dual credit courses also increased from 16% to 22%. So that is good. However, we also want to highlight that it is still below the percentage of school population in the race ethnic group for Hispanic students, as well as Black students. But it is the proportion of white and Asian students, it's below the percentage of school population. So this kind of reflects those systemic conditions that Dr. Bates was referring to that really are a signal of that ill college preparation. The key issue number 2 corresponds to high school counseling and other support for college enrollment. And here I want to highlight the bottom part of that quote. "I had friends in high school who already knew where they were going to apply, what they needed to do. Their parents already had college funds, and I just don't think that conversation happens early enough." So, what can we do to start that conversation earlier? An important finding that we uncovered was that having a teacher of the same racial background does increase the likelihood of college enrollment for both Black and Latinx students, especially in STEM-related fields. And in Illinois, what we see is that while Hispanic enrollment has grown, as we saw as well in earlier data shown today, it has increased from 19% to 27%. However, the proportion of Hispanic teachers has only grown from 5% to 8%. So this translates into teacher-student mismatch. So students don't have that teacher from the same racial background in high school. Then there is the issue of counselors in high schools, where we see important growth, as a majority of serving Hispanic and Black schools have a lower student-to-counselor ratio than the majority serving white schools, and this is a positive. However, it's still far below the recommended or the ideal size, and in addition, the race-ethnic mismatches persist. So now that we talked about how can we foster or promote student college enrollment, we want to talk about key issue number 3, which corresponds to navigating the pathway to and through college. That is, once students are already in a college environment. Here, I wanna read the middle part of the quote, what it says. "I definitely understand that it's a college setting. You're becoming an adult, you're figuring it out, you're navigating those things. But I do think that might be where some people could struggle in a class and then kind of drop off because you don't feel that support unless you actually do the reaching out yourself." So what does this mean? We found in the literature that Latinx students do report a lack of readiness for understanding how colleges work. It's not just about getting to college, it's about understanding what to do once you are in college. How can I transfer? What are the expectations that I have? The role of faculty and advisors and counselors, can I reach out to them? How do I reach out to them? And so forth. And this is true for all students, but it's particularly true for Latino families, as our families often do not have this college-specific navigational capital due to the large number of first-year students from a Latino background. So we also identified potential solutions. This includes high school to college collaboratives so that we can create that conversation earlier on how to work and navigate a college environment. Orientation programs, but in this case, not just for students, also for families, so that families know how to help navigating these college environments, and more intentionality with faculty, counselors, and promoting peer connections among college students. And of course, as we mentioned before, it's really important to have more Latinx faculty and counselors in college environments as well. We also identified some what we're calling trustation points, which are these key transition points in time that relate to choices that students make that are related to college persistence. So one of these is the summer melt. What happens? Students want to enroll to college. They're decided that that's what they want to do. Then summer happens. I gotta work. What am I gonna do during summer? I'm not enrolling yet, and that often translates into not enrolling at all. And we see this is especially true after high school, as well as during the first year after completion of that first year that Dr. Bass mentioned before. We also see that these transition points happens when there's like a late registration for a semester, or when there are some financial holes. So if there's a financial hole, oftentimes students are not allowed to enroll in college for that semester. That leads to dropping out of classes, just stopping out completely, and that translates into a decrease of likelihood of persisting through college. Once again, we also identified potential solutions in the literature, which correspond to using these high school and college partnerships to really monitor the worries about college during the summer before students enroll to college, particularly those related to financial concerns and the need to work over that summer period. And in addition to this, encourage that immediate enrollment upon high school graduation. We also believe it's important to develop college early warning indicators for these specific points, and also enlist college mentors and advisors and let them know about these points so that they keep tabs on those. And also inform students during high school counseling and college orientation about these critical points that they are about to face, and also the potential solutions to those. Key issue number 4 is not going to be a surprise to most of us. It's understanding college financing. And here I will read the full quote. I worked almost full-time in a college at a retail job to help my family financially at home. This time could have been used to work on my own educational goals, such as internships, etc. So, Latinx students face financial burden, like most students do, but this is especially true for Latinx students. This has several implications. First, it translates into that lower likelihood of college enrollment, especially during summer, and being affected by the summer melt we were just discussing. It also increases the number of hours that they work during college. In addition, this has implications of a greater likelihood of attending college either part-time and then becoming a fluctuating status students where like, I'm working, but I'm a student, I'm working, but I'm a student. And all of these factors together translate into likelihood of less persistence through college. So what can we do about this? We think that it's really important to increase we also know that financial aid can increase Latinx student success, especially need-based aid. So we think that it is important to provide access to financial advising in high school and college. Having that access to financial aid also leads to more full-time enrollment and fewer working hours. So we see, backed with the previous slide, that this translates into higher persistence through college. How can we do that? We think it's important that we also inform students and their families about the availability of other types of resources of financial aid. As we see in this graph, Black and Latino parents are most likely to think that scholarships and financial aid overall are only available for students with exceptional grades and abilities, so it decreases their likelihood of seeking it out. So we think it's important to inform about these opportunities. Key issue number 5, it's about the importance of family and community during the college journey. And while it's important for most groups, student groups, for Latino students, it is very important. This is a quote from a father of a Latino college student from the Corpus groups conducted by Dr. López. It reads, "Growing up, it was difficult for me. My parents couldn't give me the best education, so I made a promise to myself to always do better with my kids. I started communicating these aspirations to them from when they were in elementary, then high school. You're going to do better. You're going to go further in education. You have to get the best." So this quote really exemplifies this balance of family responsibilities and expectations that parents have and their families for Latino students. You know, there are sibling caretaking, financial contributions, language and cultural broking. It's not just translating from English to Spanish or any other language. It's also about explaining how culturally college works. What do I have to do? What it's important for me to do one activity over the other. And we know the parent expectations about the post-secondary experience are there. And because of these, we also found that the whole family is central to post-secondary decision-making of Latinx students. This quote on the right of the screen really highlights that juxtaposition between balancing the expectations, wanting Latinx students to do post-secondary work, while also maintaining those family responsibilities. The center part of the quote reads, my mom's like, get A's in school, go to school, do your BA, but she wants us to have like a miracle or something. Because I'm like, Mom, it takes studying and reading and homework. I'm like, it's not just gonna happen, I need to do it. She wants me to get the A's, she's so happy, but she also wants me to do all this other stuff. So this is an important quote. On the other hand, while we have to balance all these expectations and responsibilities, there is also that aspect of community and family support. The quote reads, I remember questioning whether I wanted to stick it out with biology as a major, and I met my mom for a pollo asado, and I was sobbing, but she was very calm, and she provided the emotional support that eventually helped me finish my degree. And this is something that we found all over the literature. Latinx students report that their families provide social and emotional support. Latino students, male in particular, do build off of those family expectations and support, especially in the community college environment. And while these students do report some difficulties balancing the expectations with the support that we were talking about, right? We do think that community decision-making is important. Latinx students also report their parents often misunderstand the college workload expectations and college outreach because it is lacking, right? Parents don't often know how colleges work, and because we know it's important, that's why we were mentioning about orientation programs being intentional for families and so forth.
So I'm conscientious of time here, so I'm going to wrap up pretty quickly and just say that all of these wonderful family factors also influence where Latino students go to school. They often choose to go to schools that have a history of institutional success with Latino students, including what are known as Hispanic serving institutions, or those institutions with 25% or more Hispanic student population. And we just want to briefly touch on this last issue, the post-college landscape, because we believe what happens after college influences whether someone chooses to enroll in college. And I'll just show this graph here, this table here, showing that in spring 2020, bachelor's degree recipients, we saw their outcomes from this study from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And Hispanic students who attained bachelor's degrees were less likely to be employed full-time, or to be continuing education than their white, Asian, Native, and multiracial peers. And while that might be seen by some to be an artifact of what occupation or major they chose, I do want to also show this, that even for students who had the same bachelor's degree major, these disparities for Hispanic men and women, Hispanic Latino men and women persist. So that's an important conversation to have about what happens after college. And now we will pass it back to Sylvia to start this wonderful panel discussion.
Me? Okay. I'm going to invite the panelists to come on up as well, and we're going to have a conversation. And we invited panelists, however you'd like to see it, and I think everybody's mic'd, so we should be okay. But first of all, let's say thank you again to the incredible research team that did all of this work for us. And let me just say, these are the highlights. The detail in the report is very, very rich, so we really invite you to read the report and give us your feedback, because from here we are planning on how do we move forward. So So good to see you all. So thank you all for being here. So again, the agenda, the report, their bios are all in the QR code, so I'm not going to do them any justice at all in terms of them, but just so you know who's on the panel, let's start from left to right, and then I've got a couple of questions that I'll feel. Just introduce yourself, your organization, and we sort of identified panelists to talk about one of the 6 key issues that we highlighted in the report. So go ahead, Patricia.
Hi, buenos dias, good morning. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Proud Latina, Mexican-American, daughter of immigrants, first-generation college graduate and professional, and I have the honor to lead HACE, the Hispanic Alliance for Career Enhancement, an organization whose mission since 1982 is to positively impact workplaces by cultivating the community of Latino talent, providing our community the insight, access, and support to be successful in their careers. I also, my background spans from co-founding a nonprofit. I spent some time working for the community college for the state of Indiana, working with Latino students and their families, and so this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and so looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Patricia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Castillo, Richmond, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Partnership for College Completion. Our organization is thrilled to have the Latino Policy Forum join us in higher education equity work. We got our start about 7 years ago and do state policy and advocacy efforts around racial and socioeconomic equity in higher education in the state of Illinois. We do institutional transformation in partnership with colleges and universities to shift policy and practice at the campus level, and also data and research to elevate the issues that you heard a lot about this morning as well. Thank you for having me.
Hello, everybody. Juan Salgado, Chancellor of City Colleges of Chicago, community college graduate, 5 of 6 children, the 5th of 6 children, all community college graduates. I lead Chicago's system of community colleges, 7 colleges, about 63,000 students, nearly 50% who are Latino.
Bienvenidos. Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the Latino Policy Forum for hosting us. My name is Lazaro López. I am the Associate Superintendent over at High School District 214. We have about 12,000 students with majority minority high school students in 3 of those 6 schools. I also have the pleasure of serving as chair of the Illinois Community College Board for the last 8 years. Been very proud of that work, and also a founding board member for the partnership, and a community college graduate and veteran. So thank you so much for including us.
Buenos días todos. Soy Andrés López. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a graduate student at Loyola in the EDS and M.Ed program. So I am getting started on the professional side of things, but I do currently sit on a nonprofit board. The director is the regional board of directors in our nonprofit of GLACUR, the Great Lakes affiliate of college, universities, residence halls, in which we fight for a lot of campus advocacy within the Great Lakes region. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So we really want to thank Andres for being the graduate student on the panel here. And our advisory panel really was robust, and that it included the presidents of the 6 or 7 universities, the largest Latino student population, but also included some students. It included the partners that work in this space too. So this really is a culmination of just lots and lots of input. So to get us started, I'm going to ask you all sort of the same question, but each of you from obviously one of those 6 boxes that are there, the ways that we're starting to think about how do we organize this work that we're doing. So what policy or practice should we focus on to improve higher education outcomes for Latinos? So with that, we will start with Dr. López.
Thank you so much. And again, I think our focus on higher ed persistence to completion really starts prior to stepping in the doors of higher ed. And so there has been a statewide scalable practice that we've been engaged in, both from the K-12 lens and from the community college lens, and that's this idea of college ready by design, and ensuring that we're guaranteeing college readiness for all of our students when they graduate from high school, which really was not a standard that we met for quite some time. And that is in part by ensuring that every student has access to either a transition course while they're in high school in both math and in English, that transition course gives them an entry point into college level coursework, access to early college credit opportunities in English, in math, in that core, in college speech, as well as some career pathway courses. Again, so students are experiencing that self-efficacy and that sense of readiness for that college experience. And that happens through partnerships with many institutions. Locally at my institution, we have about 8 post-secondary partners we work with, both from public privates, 4 years and 2 years, in order to ensure this practice, both students on our campus as well as on those higher ed campuses, really trying to address that context also of that situational awareness and creating this momentum effect, right? And then also this idea of the power of 15. And the power of 15 is something that we're all familiar with, that when students reach that first full semester of college coursework, they've doubled their likelihood of persistence and completion. So if we can get every Illinois high school graduate walking across that stage, really with a backpack full of college credits, self-efficacy, and a plan for that next step, then we're going to have a significant impact on this issue.
Thank you so much. And Andres did some really innovative research on the persistence.
So what I really looked at was a lot of the cultural and financial aspects of increasing the retention and graduation rates of Latino males specifically. So looking at kind of the cultura de la familia, so looking at familismo and changing some of the way that family dynamic kind of works, as a lot of times family members will hold not necessarily the student hostage at home, but say that you can't leave or you can't go up too far because we need you here. So again, the financial part kind of ties into that, as looking at the socioeconomic scale, Latinos tend to be on the lower end of that. So we need the student to work a part-time job to help at home, which we did see that in the research, as well as in terms of familismo and taking care of the family. Sometimes they have a younger sibling or an elderly to kind of care for. Many times I've heard where, especially when it comes to females, that parents tend to not let them go off to college or even live on campus because, well, you're a woman, I need you kind of here. And then men, they kind of have a little bit more leeway, but they're still held financially responsible for the family. So it's dismantling some of that toxic masculinity as well, and those societal roles that we've created for both men and women.
And that's so true. I know that I have one child, and you want your children to be powerful, and I wanted her to go out there to the world. But wait, I don't want you to go away to college. So I had to struggle with that myself, right? So it really is, when we think about these family and cultural ties, and especially when we also combine it with, as you're saying, Andres, the economic security or insecurity of families and how much people contribute, and young people are expected to contribute to the household expenses. So Juan, or Chancellor Salgado?
Yeah, so let me just say, and I'll say a little bit more, I think the connections between colleges and high schools are really important, and starting earlier in elementary schools. So, to Laz's point, we need to do more of that. I'll share more later. But in terms of policy, I want to focus in on transfer, right? I went from community college to a private liberal arts institution, pretty doggone expensive. But you know what? They took every single one of my credits. And guess what? The state institutions, that was way back when, would not. They basically said to me, all your efforts, all your perseverance, all your persistence, only a part of it is actually going to count. You got to come and stay in college an extra year. What does that cost me? Financially and lost income. But also, what does that cost me in terms of confidence? What does that cost me, in terms of career opportunities, right? And getting into, not just transferring to the college. So now, yes, you can transfer to a college, but can you transfer into the nursing program? Can you transfer into the engineering program? Can you transfer into the highest value programs on the campus when your efforts merit it. And the answer to that today is not good enough. It's not good enough in any state in the country, and we like to tout in Illinois that we do very well. Well, we do okay. But very well, if I were a classroom teacher, I'd say we don't have our standards high enough as it relates to what we ought to be doing, with transfer. And so we're making some progress. We need to exponentially improve the transfer system for students. Why? Because cost. And why are students choosing community college? One, high quality. Don't kid yourself. When you look at those graduation rates, all right? 4 years are selective enrollment institutions. Don't forget that, okay? We're gonna catch up to them with the work that we're doing. I'm saying it to you now, I'm proving it to you later, right? But you know what? If we don't have the transfer system, the ultimate outcome of the BA, is not gonna be there. And the ultimate outcome of the job that you wanna have, the career you want, is not gonna be there, right? And so don't let anybody kid you in Illinois. We got a long way to go with transfer.
Thank you so much. So we're beginning to see these individual issues, but also how they're interconnected and the intersectionality of them. So Lisa, what would you add to what policy or practice should be focused on to improve higher education outcomes?
First, I will say yes, Chancellor, yes to that transfer. I'm fired up here. I'm going to talk a little bit about college affordability and here understanding college financing as probably the most significant access issue that we see across the board for students. And I want to connect it to this issue of why college, right? We're talking a lot about college. Students have increasingly been going to college over the years. And I want to connect these things. So why college? Well, we see since the 2008 recession, 95% of new jobs have required a college credential. We see that. We see adults who have a college credential being able to weather economic ups and downs more easily. They have more flexibility in their careers. They have more access to different kinds of jobs. We see that. For a Latino student, we see them earning, on average, 80% more in their career over a lifetime than a student without a college credential. We see this. And we see this happening repeatedly over time. Now, in 2010, at the peak of college going in this country, highest number of students we've ever had, we saw 98% of parents saying they felt good about college, they wanted their students to go to college. Sometime in the past decade, that has changed kind of dramatically. I mean, we're seeing it all over the headlines now. I hear it every day. Well, why college? Are we sure college is still a good investment? We see about half of parents now, in a recent poll I just heard last week, half of parents are saying, I don't think I want my kids to go to a four-year institution. And I think we can draw a very direct line to the college affordability issue. Over the past couple of decades, and this has recently begun to turn around in Illinois, which we are thrilled about, we have seen a decrease in state investment in our public institutions by about half. So in Illinois, the state appropriation to higher education across 2- and 4-year institutions was cut in half. And so many institutions, especially the ones that are more dependent on tuition, have turned to tuition and fees and increased those tuition and fees to be able to provide a quality education for students. And so that burden has shifted in a very significant way from the state to families. And I think the big deal with that is that changes the equation for families, right? What are those opportunity costs? Is it a good investment for me? How long is it going to take me to get that degree? What do I have to take out some debt? That's scary to me. I've never done that before. What does that mean? How long am I going to graduate in? We used to think about this as a 2-year in a community college, another 2-year in a 4-year institution. But now we think of it as a 5- or a 6-year trajectory for most of our students. That dramatically increases the cost and it shifts the calculation. So I think if we understand that college is necessary for the majority of well-paying jobs and for that flexibility over a lifetime in the labor market, we as a state must demand that we treat it like a public good. It is not a luxury good. It should not be a luxury good that only the few can afford. It should be the choice that was laid out on the screen earlier, that you choose the higher education pathway for you that is not determined for you by the price of what it looks like. And so what can we do about that? We can invest in our state need-based aid program, the MAP grants. We can invest in making sure that Pell grants at the federal level keep pace with inflation and the purchasing power of Pell is increased. And we can invest in our institutions so that costs are held low for families across the income and wealth spectrum.
Thank you. And once students manage this full trajectory, there's still the challenges of what we saw in the kinds of jobs and even the wages, the inequality in the wages. And Patricia, what would you suggest as a policy or practice?
Yeah,
Given what
I see
does?
myself represented in this trajectory. Is I tell people that I experienced the education and the access or the resource gap that exists for students. As a high school student, I went from a low-income, predominantly Black and Mexican neighborhood to a more affluent, predominantly white, Caucasian high school, both public high schools here in the United States of America, but simply by the socioeconomic status, the academic rigor was on a different level. And we talk about, being able to get that additional support, the AP classes and whatnot. But then when it came to go to college, my dad's like, te quedas aquí, right? You're not going to go far away. But I had 3 older brothers that were able to convince my traditional strict Mexican father that I had to go away, So I find myself in these stories, but also know in terms of the points of privilege that I had along the way. As it pertains to Latinos in the workforce. So we've got about, at HACE, 250 corporate employer partners that we work with. Many of their employees that are going through our training programs. And one program in particular, the youngest demographic is high school and college, but our university leadership program, we had interns over the summer that said that because of HACE, they didn't see themselves in their careers before that. Because through HACE, they saw visible role models, backgrounds of Latino professionals in different aspects that shared their stories with them to empower them, because when they were back at their universities, they didn't see that, or at home, right? If you're first generation and you're not able to talk about your experience. And when you look at the HSIs and that the majority of our students are going there, a lot of our employer partners still to this day ask me, what's an HSI? That's a problem. And if the HSIs are determined basically by the percentage, how do we make sure there's some sort of legislation or certification that says, yes, you're not only HSI, but you're preparing our students for workforce ready? And what does that wraparound service credential certification look like? So that, and it should be a collaboration between private, public, to be able to make that happen and see, again, thinking about what are some bold ideas, bold solutions. Perhaps if the majority of our students are going there, what could that look like to certify? And fun fact, the fastest growing HSIs happen to be HBCUs. And how do we support that?
Great. So if you have a question, raise your card. A staff person will come out to pick it up, and we'll be able to ask a couple of questions. We're going to do another round of questions, and then we'll move on to our policy recommendations or our policy perspective on this. Mm-hmm. So let me lead off and ask Patricia again. So you alluded a little bit to this, Patricia, but what else do we need to do to better support Latinos in finding their first jobs and being better prepared to succeed in their careers?
Yeah, one is access and resources. I think a lot of the students that we're working with and they're preparing for their first jobs are not fully leveraging their career centers and will come to an HACE. Right? So it's like, how do we ensure that we're building those relationships? The other key thing is the soft skills, the readiness to get into their first jobs. When you look at the data in terms of not just Latina women, we talk a lot about Latina pay gap, but Hispanic Latino men also being the lowest paid. I think on the data that was shared for this example was for the same, in architecture, the same degree, but a lot of it has to do with the cultural component. You talked about about it, right, is how are we ensure that we're building the skill sets with the cultural awareness, the self-awareness piece to understand the beautiful values that many of us grew up with, the humility, modesty, respect to authority, which are beautiful values, but how are you shifting, how are you asserting yourself when it comes to that first opportunity, or once you're there, to ensure that you're getting promoted and you get advanced? Because if you look at a traditional corporate culture, the culture is very different from traditional Latino culture, you know? And so when you're there, they're saying, oh, you know, she's not ready for that next promotion because she just hasn't said anything. You're working really hard, keeping your head down. But it's like, that doesn't mean she's not ready for that next promotion. But how are we, you know, two things. One is preparing the individual so that we're learning not to ever change who we are, but how do we lead with the beautiful values and learn when is it that we need to shift in order to be effective as communicators, leaders, and influencers, so we can get to that equal pay or the equity that's needed, because we usually accept the first offer. And once you do that, that has a ripple effect as it pertains to next advancement opportunities, which is why there's a lot on now employers no longer requiring that they ask you what was your last pay. So that could help, right, looking at things like that. But then once you're there is how are we not only helping the individual with that self-awareness and professional development, the soft skills, but then ensuring that from the employer side, the structures, processes, the hiring and the advancement policies that are happening are equitable, right? Diverse hiring committees, eliminating bias as much as possible throughout those processes.
And so much of that is in the report. We talk about how many of our students are first-gen college-going students that don't have the networks to even know where to begin to think about how to get a corporate job.
Right.
That's right. Exactly. Show of hands, how many of us are first-generation college students in the room? So look around, folks. Most of us. So along those, when we think of, and then backing up through the trend in terms of understanding college financing, Lisa, what do you see as more work to be done, and how can we all work together to make college more affordable?
So, on average, in Illinois, it costs a Latino student just over half of their family's annual income to attend a public four-year institution today. It's a little bit less in community colleges. It's a little bit more in private four-year institutions. That is completely untenable. So I'm really excited about a lot of the work happening in the state to drive down those costs that I've been talking a lot about this morning. So on the investment in institutions front, there has been a commission at the state level for the past couple of years, nearly 2 years, to focus on equitable funding in public universities. Illinois is one of the only states in the country without a funding formula for how universities receive funding, how that is distributed across the system. It's not equitable. I'm sure we can all know that without even seeing the data. So there's been an effort to advance that work in the state. There needs to be a similar effort to take a look at the way that community colleges specifically have been dramatically underfunded for the past 20 years as well, receive about 23% of the funding appropriation that's given to higher education in a typical year. And we have a real opportunity to look at that, look at the equity inherent in that, look at which institutions are getting the funding, look at what institutions need in order to provide an excellent quality education regardless of where students choose to go, but also that that's held affordable for students. So I'm really excited about equitable funding and investment into and four-year institutions. I think this transfer issue is a very significant financial issue as well. If students' credits don't count and transfer into the four-year institution, that is lost time and lost money. That is absolutely a funding issue and affects overall time to degree. So how are we getting students through those systems in an equitable way? How are we as institutions held accountable for that work, right? The Chancellor talked about that, the work they are doing to increase graduation rates significantly and equity in those graduation rates. So how do we hold institutions accountable? We as students cannot afford to be in school forever, right? We need to make sure that we can get out and get into the workplace and provide for our families. I also think the dual credit, dual enrollment work is incredibly important. There are significant equity issues there as well. You saw that in the data. And I think there are a number of other things that we can work on together, but I would say those are some really big things connected to financing.
So you know what? I neglected to say that we're being live streamed. So if you want to wave to folks. But we do have an audience that's watching this, and of course this will be taped, and you'll be able to share it with colleagues that might not have been able to be here today. So Andres, you talked about, thinking about how do we navigate this whole college environment, and you certainly talked about the importance of family in making college decisions. Can you share how your family factored into you and some of your peers' college experiences? And what can colleges do to better engage Latino families?
Yeah. I also talked really the importance of family. In my experience, I was that kind of like that rebel teenager that was like, I don't care, I'm gonna go off somewhere. And it was really funny the way it all worked out, because I ended up just going to UIC, which I live in the suburbs of Chicago, so it was it was far enough that I was away from family, but close enough that when I was hungry, I'd just go and get some pozole and tamales. Gracias, mamá. I lived on campus. I decided to live on campus. I wanted to get out of that household. Kind of bringing up with familismo, I lived in a small apartment with my mom and two of my older sisters. My third sister ended up joining as well. So it's a very small apartment with a lot of people. And I knew that going to college, I needed my own space. I needed, just a room that I can lock myself in and just sit down and do what I wanted to do. I also knew from my experience in high school that I was extremely involved. Although my family didn't play a large role in kind of my involvement in high school, like my mom, me being male, my mom just kind of was like, oh, you do you. When you get home, you'll have, some food ready for you. So yes, I did play a little bit into that toxic masculinity there, because I was like, I don't have to wash the dishes or do, laundry. But that's where I learned some of my privilege, where I found out that my sister, who wanted to go off to college, my mom was like, you can't. You have two younger siblings to take care of and help me financially. I even have a couple of friends, as I said, where, they come to my dorm and they're like, oh, this is really nice. I would love to live here. And I was like, why don't you? It's an amazing opportunity. Yes, $10,000 is not cheap. However, it's a great opportunity, especially if you're highly involved. I understand my privilege as male as well that I can't walk around the city at night. So living on campus gives me that luxury of I stay on campus, and I may stay on campus late, but I get to walk to my dorm in a pretty safe environment. So as Latinas, that is extremely, it is extremely dangerous to kind of just travel around the city on the CTA at night. So they're like, well, I can't, because my parents said no. My parents was like, I can't live on campus. So I know that in some people's roles, family played a much larger role than my own. Sometimes I think that family did play a larger role because it kind of created who I was and my mentality of things, where I knew I had to go to college because I needed to do better for my family. My dream as a kid was to buy a house for my mom, because she's always lived with me and my siblings, so it's like, give her her own place. So it's definitely developed who I am, but in terms of my choice of college, staying close enough to home that I can go back whenever I want, but far enough that they won't come visit me in the city.
Thanks for sharing that, Andres. So Chancellor Salgado, is there you talked about the need for transfer rates and to ease that, but is there something else that you wish you could do but haven't been able to get off the ground, and what's needed to get it going?
So let me just say real quick something that we have absolutely gotten off the ground, which is our work with Chicago Public Schools. And I just don't want to miss the opportunity to tell folks, that we have this roadmap. Look it up. Thanks to the Joyce Foundations and several others that got us going. All the things that was talked about in this report about what we need to do with dual credit, with advising and navigation, we are getting it done, right? But let me just say to your question very specifically is, community colleges our systems are not built, to really help students persist to a great degree, and so we have such a, if you will, a volume of students, that we can sometimes be very reactionary. Our students are coming in late, we're building our schedules, like in real time, because obviously you have thousands of students and they're picking all schedules based upon their work and whatnot. So what we've wanted to do, and we're launching it this spring, it'll be in full effect by next fall, but it's something I wish we would have done earlier, and that's year-long scheduling, okay? Oh. Where you can actually say, here's my schedule, not just for the spring, but I can do summer and next fall, okay? Now, and all of the courses I register for, guaranteed to run.
Yes.
They're not coming off the rolls. Do you understand, right? So then when I go into the fall, I can go all the way back around to the spring, right? We're going to deliver to our students. Obviously, they can change the schedule if they'd like, but we can't change it on them, right? Or we don't spring it on them, 3 months before they register. So by giving that, what's our biggest challenge? Our biggest challenges are those moments where you have to sort of start again. You have to, plan your life again based on a new schedule, and then you decide, well, I'll just take one less course, or I'll do, no. Let's get you programmed in for a year in advance, a year in advance, and a year in advance. We believe this will have a major effect on student retention and persistence.
But, Chancellor, you started to speak to this. How many Chicago public school students graduated with a community college degree this year? Well,
so we receive, to be clear, when you look at Illinois, let me just start with Illinois, and we're very much in the same trend. About 23% of the 47% of students that go on to post-secondary education come to community college from the get-go, right? That's not talking about the early college students, which, by the way, I have to say this, right, on equitable outcomes, right? CPS is 46% Latino, 36% Black. Your early college efforts, because we've been intentional about it, are 46. Mirror the CPS, equitable outcomes. And I think that, what we're seeing is a greater number of those students. So 30% increase in direct student enrollment from Chicago public schools to city colleges year over year from 2021 to 2022. And by the way, for fall of 2023, it's even higher. So we're seeing more community college direct enrollment, right, from our students. And I predict we'll see more of that.
I do want to, because I think it's important to understand when we're looking at community colleges, is not just the graduation rate, but the advancement rate. A lot of students that step foot on a college campus aren't planning to earn that associate's. They might be doing their general studies, which we aligned as a state that if you do your GECC, you can transfer, and all of those credits go with you to our public institution and all of those privates that have signed on. So if you look at advancements rates, some of those sort of success metrics are up by about 20 points for the state. So I just think it's important for us not to undermine our own public education systems sometimes by sort of misrepresenting the realities on the ground.
And just so we have pivoted to something called the outcome measure. It's a positive outcome if you graduate with a credential, an associate's degree, or you transfer to a four-year university, because so many of our students leave before they actually get. That's the actual advancement piece. I would just say in terms of students either getting a degree or moving on, we're at an all-time high, right?
That's great.
But yet there's still a gap between our outcomes and four-year university outcomes. We can close it.
Yep, and that's what we're about. So, Dr. López, how does academic and student counseling play into that?
Yeah, so it's significant, and you heard about it in the landscape study results, particularly not only the role of the family, but the necessity of sort of an early advising approach. I know locally we engage in an early advising model with one of our university partners, Eastern Illinois University, where students for the entire year prior to stepping foot on that university campus have met with advisors, not just admissions folks, but advisors and students through leveraging the virtual through Zoom, as well as on-campus experiences, and also bringing the entire family with them to that campus experience. In education specifically, to try to increase the number of our Latino staff in education, we have students on that campus, upwards of 10 to 20 students for an entire 3-week experience where they're having during the summer a college experience and at their local elementary schools for students wishing to pursue education pathway. All of those help to support sort of the realities of what the experience is going to feel like, what it's going to feel like living on a campus at a 4-year institution. And then the other piece I would say is not only have we expanded significantly locally early college access, we've got 84% of our students are graduating with college credit in hand. A majority of our students have already taken college English and college math, removing that as a barrier to persistence and completion. But we also have students on NLU's campus, for example, starting their bachelor's in business administration, or on Harper's campus in the healthcare pathway and doing human anatomy and physiology with the cadavers. And I say that in the context of counseling. Students need regular engagement. They need the self-efficacy to feel like I can be successful. And there is nothing like self-efficacy when you've had some type of a work experience in your field, you're on that college campus, and you've already earned some college credit. You're set up in order with that momentum to really persist to completion.
Thank you. So we just have a few minutes left, and so not everyone has to respond to this question, and the report does speak to the status of undocumented students. But let me ask you, how can we consider the particular needs of undocumented students or students from mixed status families? Who'd like to address that?
Well, I mean, I'll just say, you know, I think we've taken a leadership role at City Colleges in this regard. You know, I will start by keeping our tuition affordable. You know, 8 years without raising tuition, period. You know, I've been chancellor for 6 years. I've had the pleasure of not raising tuition once yet, okay? That's all students, but also we have the STAR Scholarship. It's 67% Latino. Every year we've had the STAR Scholarship. You get a B average community college completely free. It doesn't matter your documentation, since the number of students that have participated has increased. Okay, we have our largest class ever. Over 17,000 students have participated in STAR Scholarship, and it's 67% Latino students. It indexes more than our regular population. Why? Because we are the destination for undocumented students. Based on state law, we have undocumented student liaisons, piece of legislation that we supported at each one of our campuses, led by Luvia Moreno. And not just that, you know, we're a welcoming place for families too, right? We talked about this before, but Luis Narvaez is here that runs our adult education program. You know, we're not just doing English as a second language nowadays. We're doing community health worker in Spanish. You know, we're about to relaunch Artes Culinarias in Spanish. We have bridge programs in early childhood and many other career fields, right? So that you have a situation where it's not just the young people that are exposed to college, but it's actually their parents. When a parent fills out a FAFSA form, you know, when a parent registers for college, when a parent utilizes the college services that are on campus, and our adult ed students, you know, can utilize all these things and do all of those things, right? Then they become familiar, you know, and they have a different conversation, you know, with their students. So I think it's all of that.
Yeah. And I'm sorry we won't be able to get to all of the questions, but let me also echo that I think we now require that all universities and public institutions in Illinois have a liaison to work specifically with undocumented students. So Illinois really is a leader in the nation on this as well. And lastly, just for 1 minute, how can we ensure colleges and universities have the resources and support for Latino, and we've been saying Latino, but Latino, A, X, and A. We're still in the process of identity formation, and I respect people's choices. So how can we ensure that they have the resources to support students? Yeah. Lisa, you talked a little bit about that. Is there anything else you would add?
Yeah, and I'll say legislation is really important in a lot of these things, but it's equally as important as what happens on the ground on the campuses. And I think we've all kind of talked about that in different ways. The RISE Act in Illinois also gives undocumented students access to MAP grants now.
Yes.
And I think that's really important that we continue that advocacy and that we increase the value and the number of MAP grants available to students, which has been dramatically increasing after a period of decline. A significant period of decline as well. So we're really thrilled with this administration and the investment that they're putting in our students directly through MAP and into our institutions as well. I think we need to make sure they're funded properly, right? All of these institutions are different. You know, there's differences by design in community colleges, different from each other, from 2 years and 4 years, and private and public and private nonprofit institutions. And we need to give them the resources that they need to do the work they need to do so they can serve their students. And then we need to make sure legislation is there to hold accountable to the things that we think are important.
Thanks. Go ahead.
I would add, I think that part of building these type of solutions is making sure that we've got within these institutions a diverse representation, right? From the Board of Trustees to the leadership team to those that are
Yes.
professors. And so that's a big part of the solution that I don't think is often discussed often enough. And I have to give a shout out because I'm a newly board member at Northeastern Board Foundation. And so I know we've got our interim presidents here, so shout out for them. But I'm also proud to serve there because there's the Board of Trustees to the foundation board is increasingly becoming reflective of the student population, right? And so with that, it'll have that trickle effect in terms of the policies and structures in place to be able to build that supportive environment for students along the way. So I think that's a critical piece as well.
So let me just end this portion by saying that two things. While we've talked a lot about community colleges, what we also know is that Latino students under-enroll in four-year institutions. Mm-hmm. There could be many more going to four-year institutions that do many more going to four-year institutions than do. And regrettably, we know, well, good but bad, we know that if they go to a four-year institution, they're much more likely to graduate than they do at the two-year institutions. So this transfer piece is really important for us to think about because, again, we want to respect people's choices. And then let me just say that the data, when we were talking about the data, you saw some of the data that was also there for the Black and the African American population. We're pleased that the president of Chicago State University was on our advisory committee. Chicago State has done sort of a similar study with respect to the African American community, and we expect to move forward and work with them as we think about what our advocacy initiatives are. With that, help me thank this amazing panel. And let me call to the stage newly promoted Vice President of the Latino Policy Forum for Education, Dr. Vonderlack Navarro, who's going to let you know how we're thinking about our framing for how we move forward.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you all so much. Really difficult to follow such an amazing panel. I really appreciate you all being here. So let's start to think about work that needs to be done to create statewide systems to support Latinos to and through college. Latinos who are often first-generation college students must address a myriad of questions as they pursue higher education. We heard this from how financial aid works or how their parents' undocumented status might impact where they go to college. To be successful, many are going to need systemic information and support from the education system, nonprofits, and the state. So to build the systems that support Latinos' path to and through college, and really drawing on the amazing landscape study that Mariana and Meg just shared, we're identifying the following buckets of policy directions and educational conditions that are necessary. We need to increase exposure to careers, enhance academic preparation, increase financial aid information and accountability, enhance college pathways and navigational capital, and cultivate student-ready colleges. This isn't necessarily new information. It's thinking about how we put it all together. And we know many of you today are already working on this in your respective institutions and programs. And it's why we set up today like we did with a panel where we could acknowledge all the amazing people already working in this. And most of this is implicated across the P20 system. Of course, enhancing academic preparation, it's a little in higher ed, but we're really seeing this within the P12 system. And that cultivating student-ready colleges is really under the role of higher education. So let's dive under each one. Latino students, especially first generation, have limited role models and knowledge of different careers. And this can cause them to take the wrong courses in high school, have limited preparation for their major in college, or it can cause them to stop out altogether. For these reasons, we must ensure that we continue to support students learning about careers, and this has got to start early on and happen all the way through. We need role models. And colleges have always supported their students in preparing for the labor market. But Newark, especially partnerships with Braven, point to the need and utility of providing students with a college course on preparing for the labor market. And these courses are analogous to what you might take in high school to prepare for and apply for college. P12 districts must ensure Latino students have access to strong and rigorous instruction. We heard this on the panel. And in the focus groups, Latino college students reported repeatedly that they felt unprepared. So we want to ensure Latinos have access to college prep courses. This is something we still want to learn a lot about. And currently, the state high school graduation requirements do not match some of our four-year public universities' high school course recommendations. This is a disconnect that creates an unnecessary barrier for students. So perhaps the state could consider creating a seal that tells students what it needs to be, ready for college. And this would mean students wouldn't have to figure this out in junior, senior year of high school when it's too late. We could start talking about this in 8th grade. And we could make it something that students opt into, like the state seal of biliteracy. And we don't have it here, but after we were hearing Meg and Mariana, we also need to increase the number of Latino teachers. We've been doing that for a long time at the forum, and I know there's other partners in that. Let's clap on that one. And we need more Latino counselors, right? Students need to see themselves in those that are teaching them. Latino students who are often first generation face a particularly difficult path to college. The system does not have strong on-ramps, and we kept hearing about this lack of navigational capital and how that can inhibit advanced planning. And also limited resources in Spanish can also make this more difficult. The state may wish to consider requiring students to have a post-secondary plan upon graduation. We've seen this in Chicago public schools. We know that we must decrease the counselor caseload and provide additional professional development for counselors to help them better support students. And this is something we need to scale statewide. Lack of navigational capital for Latino students and their families necessitates that we really begin considering a direct college admissions program. Now, I know we have specific examples of this in certain areas of our state. In the city, we've got 2- and 4-year institutions that have done this. But how could we scale this across Illinois? How could we start in high school? Low navigational capital means we need to scale culturally and linguistically responsive issue education on college going. And I know we can think about programs that are good at this or an institution that's good at this, but this needs to become the norm. We need to scale this. And I was so glad Lisa was on the panel because she was great at talking about this. But Latino students face high financial burdens when enrolling in college, work significant hours, and many must also manage their families or their own undocumented immigration status. And while we know there's various examples, again, we know there's certain institutions that are doing a great job at this, but Illinois needs to scale culturally and linguistically responsive issue education on financing college and accessing benefits. Students shouldn't have to ask how being undocumented affects various issues. As a state, we should increase information and supports for undocumented and mixed status families. This needs to be a matter, of course, Let's clap on that one. I like that one. Let's clap. And also, we heard so much that needs to happen around college affordability. I'm so glad that Lisa's going to be here to help us learn how to enter this space. We want to partner with all of you. I also want to say that we recognize that there has been a lot of movement. I was so glad we mentioned how there are undocumented liaisons at institutions. That's so important. We've seen investments in higher ed. We acknowledge that work has happened, but still so much more needs to be done in supporting those folks on the ground. And as we noted before, lack of navigational capital for Latino students and their families necessitates, I'm going to say it again, that we begin thinking about creating a direct college admissions program. And I had it on the P12 side because it's obviously we need to think about it from high school. The demographic cliff gives us a great excuse to really start talking about this, but it also needs to be in the higher ed camp that we're thinking about it. And I don't pretend to talk as well as Juan Salgado about two-year training. I mean, that was passionate. I was really glad you talked about it. We need to start really continuing this conversation about transfer and what it means for students when so many credits don't transfer. And just as Latino students need help in planning for and getting through undergraduate college, it doesn't stop there. We need to be also thinking about supporting for and getting to graduate school. We're not going to stop at the four-year degree. College campuses must support the students they enroll in their studies and general well-being. Latino college students need additional support as they navigate an unfamiliar education space and deal with significant stressors on themselves and their families. We heard this time and again in the research on the panel. It is the entire family that plays a role in Latinos' college journey. It is a strength, it is an asset, and higher education should include these families in student engagement practices and make sure that those practices are responsive to a family's language and cultural background. And we know many universities have a lot of supports in place for students, but more needs to be done. We need to expand those services. We need to ensure that students know that those resources exist. Latino students reported feeling stress, anxiety, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. We didn't talk a lot about it, but we need to be thinking about mental well-being. We cannot push that to the side. And unfortunately, our reality today is also thinking about wraparound services. We're thinking about food banks on campuses. We're thinking about the need for childcare. We need to be thinking holistically about this issue. And then college campuses must create welcoming, inclusive environments. The focus groups kept telling us from the perspective of students not feeling like they belonged on college campuses, experiencing racism, and having limited academic advising. So if we're going to make college campuses more student-centered and inclusive, we've got to make intrusive advising the norm. We've got to ensure that faculty and staff, and this is really important now with everything that's gone on nationally, that training on diversity, equity, and inclusion is happening along with supporting first-generation college students. I know it was mentioned on the panel, increasing Latino faculty and staff is critical. We can't forget that. And when the state might also want to consider creating and administering a common campus climate survey. We've done this in P12 with the 5 essentials. I know the U Chicago Consortium led the path on that, and we could consider something like that too on our campuses. So we know there is still a lot of work to be done to make our education system more equitable. And please know we at the forum recognize the tireless work of so many folks that are here today, districts, colleges, nonprofits, policymakers. We humbly are stepping into this work knowing that all of you have really paved a way. And while the forum is, deciding on where we focus our advocacy efforts, our goal is going to be more Latino college students graduating. And how we do this is through educating the community and key stakeholders. We're going to continue to employ these strategic research, policy, and practice partnerships. It's not a secret. I adore iWork and the partnership we've had there. We want to continue it. Marisa's here from the U Chicago Consortium. You know I'm going to keep bothering you because I've adored those partnerships, and we're doing a lot of work thinking about English learners and former English learners and what that means going to and through college. And so that's going to be a critical partnerships that we maintain. And then, of course, we do this through advocacy, administrative, legislative, often both. And I want to say I am so grateful, Dr. Jennifer Juarez. I get to embarrass you a little bit. You got to stand. She doesn't like people looking at her. But if folks don't know her, Jennifer's pretty amazing. She's going to be leading our work. She's embarrassed. She's going to be leading our work at the Forum on Higher Ed Policy. And she has more than a decade of experience at LARES, at UIC's program, where she's focused on supports for undergraduate Latinx students, cultivating a sense of belonging, enhancing academic success programs, and supporting Hispanic serving institutions. I know I'm already learning from you, and we got a lot of work to do. So as we begin this work, and as we've conducted this landscape study, we plan to work in partnership with many of you to ensure that more Latinos fulfill their promise and their potential. And this is going to be across the P20 system, but of course, we're going to center this work on students and families. We're also going to work with other advocacy organizations, businesses, foundations, nonprofits, and policymakers. And we're so excited to begin this work. I wanted to end today, we thought it was really important. Let's anchor all of this discussion back in the perspective of a student. So we've got a quote from our focus group on a Latino college graduate. So I'm gonna leave you all with this today. Thank you so much for coming.
So let me say thank you again to Dr. Vanderlek Navarro. We really appreciate her. I'd like all of the Latino Policy Forum team to just raise your hand to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We so appreciate you being here. And I want to also say thank you. We didn't acknowledge those that are online. Thank you for watching. Thank you for those that are here in the room. We really appreciate your investment of time and energy as we have this very ambitious agenda that we know we're going to need your help in pursuing. So with that, let me just say, please feel free to reach out with us with questions and comments and strategies, and we're going to have a fun time prioritizing all of this given our capacity, but we really, really look forward to collaboration and working with you and all of the amazing work that's already happening out there to be able to build on this so that we can have more economic prosperity, we can have more of our young people finishing school, and we can continue contributing to the growth and vitality of this state. Muchas gracias. Have a good day.